So, good morning, everyone. So, we are finally at the final day of the FDP, and this is the 13th session of the FDP. And here in this session, the topic basically is RF energy based harvesting and quantum possibilities. What are the say techniques or the possibilities related to the quantum devices and all? And today this session will be say, say discussed by me. So let me just you may know, but I am Manas Pratim Sharma, and I am working as an assistant professor in the Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering in Guwahati University. I basically work in say VLSI and say related areas and design areas. Okay, so let me start the session. I am sharing the screen. So I hope my screen is visible. Are you getting the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Thank you. So my talk basically will be on RF energy harvesting. It's so the status of RF energy harvesting, say the research that is going on. What are the design aspects in this field, and what are the quantum possibilities, in the sense that what are the different say uh, quantum device possibilities, how, why and how the quantum devices will be beneficial in RF energy harvesting based system. That is basically I will try to discuss. So I will be talking about these are the topics that say I will be discussing. So I will be talking about RF energy harvesting, the system, the rectifier, because that is what the core of the system, core of the design. That is the rectifier. Though it seems very simple, but it is not very simple. Rectifier design is not very simple at higher frequencies, and how the quantum devices or using quantum device will can actually say benefit or can have some uh, can enrich the device, can make the performance of the system better. And then the power management and storage system, how the power management and what are the storage system that is required, means the battery technologies and all, and how the concept of quantum battery can actually help in this aspect. So that is what say we'll be trying to say talk about. So as we probably all know, when we talk about an energy harvesting, so that is basically the process, energy harvesting, or we call energy scavenging. That is basically the process of deriving energy from external sources. So we have multiple sources. We have lots of natural sources. We have lots of man-made sources also. Now, when these sources are emitting some energy, it is getting radiated or emitted. So how we can harvest, how we can harness that energy, and we can use that for some purpose. That is what our energy harvesting means. So it captures the energy that is lost as heat, light, maybe sound, maybe vibration, movement, or radiation. So depending on the source, what we are talking about, there are say sunlight that is always there in the daytime. There are say light energy, indoor light energy. Then there are say sound energy in the busy areas. It will be more. Then the vibration, all those are there, and these energies are getting lost. So that is why the energy harvesting, as you probably know, the basic purpose or the basic idea is this energy that is getting lost, so can we harvest this energy and can use for some purpose. That is what our energy harvesting is. And these are the sources that we can see. We have the solar power that is always there. We have the wind power that is better in say some areas, maybe in coastal areas and all. Then the vibration when we walk, when we move, when your car is moving, there are lots of sources. Then the thermal power generation is also there. Now there also the thermal energy is getting lost. So can those energy be harvested? And here what we are talking and basically we are emphasizing is on the wireless power, because in this say era we have seen that we have lots of RF sources. We have the mobile networks that is covering almost entire geographical area. So we have the Wi-Fi's that is indoor. So this is a continuous say radiation, right? Continuously it is getting radiated. So that say energy that is involved in the electromagnetic radiation, that RF energy, so can we harvest that RF energy? That is what we are emphasizing. Now if I look at the possibility of energy harvesting in terms of say category, if I see, then from this vibration or motion from that is generating from the human beings, maybe from running, maybe from some other say cases, that is at most say 4 microwatt per centimeter square. But in industry if we see, that can be say 100 microwatt per centimeter square. Then the temperature that is generating from the normal household or the human cases, that is 25. For industry, that can be 1 to 10. Then indoor light, that is also around say 10 microwatt. Outdoor, that is 10 milliwatt. Then in RF if we see your GSM 3G and 4G network, so that is say telling us about say 0.1 microwatt per centimeter square. And in Wi-Fi if I look at, that is 1 microwatt per centimeter square. So if I look at the table, one thing that we may question, that this RF sources, the possibility or the harvested power per centimeter square is not very high. It is not very high. Then why we are talking about RF energy harvesting? Why it is so important? The one very simple answer is, this is a free energy, means it is continuously getting radiated, and it is not a function of time, in the sense that it is continuously getting radiated in the daytime, in the night time, right? So if we are talking about the sunlight, okay, so the intensity of the sunlight, that will vary, right? In the daytime also it will vary. In the morning time it will be less, maybe in the noon time it will be there, and there the inclination also will vary, right? So that is one issue, and nighttime we don't get that. But if I talk about RF sources, that is continuously radiating. So yes, amount is not very high, but if we can successfully harvest that, so that can lead us to a very good source. That is why we are interested in RF energy harvesting, and people are talking so much about the RF energy harvesting. And these sources are increasing. It is not getting reduced. The users are increasing, and gadgets are increasing. So it is increasing, and coverage is also getting increased. Almost it is going to cover the whole globe. So as I have already said, this is a free energy. That is the basic appeal. We are having the communication, so everywhere we are getting it. In indoor environments also we are getting the Wi-Fi's. So it is the free energy. And here the basic thing is harvesting the RF energy under the SAR level, specific absorption rate, we know, because beyond that it is not permissible to do the say radiations or do the say transmission, because that will be hazardous for human health, that we know. So that cannot be break. So that means a very low power signal needs to be harvested. That is what, that is the bottom line is. Harvesting RF energy under SAR level means a very low power signal needs to be harvested. So yes, design challenges are there. I'll talk about after a few slides. So it facilitates wireless charging of low power devices. That is possible if we can successfully do the say harvesting. And if we look at the current trend in the devices as well as the communication based systems, the requirement of power is gradually becoming lower. We are more interested in low power designs. And if you say talk about the communication generations, so from 3G to 4G, 4G to 5G, the requirement of power is getting less and less. We are now talking about say small say means your femtocells, picocells, like that. In your earlier say cells that were being used in say 3G communications or maybe 4G communications, in 5G communications we are talking about smaller geographic cells, right? So which are where the communicate where this base stations that will be say communicating with a very less power. So that means the communication networks that we have, so that requires less power. And similarly in other applications also we are observing that the requirement of power is gradually getting say decreased. Yes, we are having lots of things. If I talk about the say mobile phone, devices are improving. So it is becoming less power hungry, but yes, lots of features are there in the mobile phone. So that is why maybe the power requirement, if we have lots of applications, if you run through power requirement, of course that will not be too low. But ultimately overall, if we look at the device specifics and if we look at the communication node requirement, then yes, it is reducing. So that is why this possibility is higher. So also it facilitates the design of battery-less devices. In communication network, when we have an IoT network or wireless sensor network or any other communication network, if we want to set up in those say geographical areas where means which are remote, where it is very difficult to have a continuous power supply. So there, can we make those say communication networks self-sustainable in terms of power? That is a very important aspect. And in this case, if we can replace the battery, or if we can design the say networks without a battery, means we can completely make a batteryless say design, then that will be better. And that is also possible. That is also possible. And that is what your RF energy harvesting is say giving us, or it is showing us the way to do so, such that these communication networks can become self-sustainable in terms of power. And that is why so people are more interested in doing this RF energy harvesting. And you can see there are lots of people there say working in different aspects of RF energy harvesting. So this is just a simple depiction. There are lots of users starting lots of gadgets, your tablets, mobile phones, say laptops, the backbones, BTS stations, then the routers, and there are lots of users, lots. So that is why we can definitely go for this RF energy harvesting. Now, when we talk about that, is okay, we need to harvest the energy, but how to design the system? That is the primary objective. We need to design the system. And how we design the system? So uh, before we going to design the system, in every design, you all are aware that you have to first talk about the objective, why we are going to design. That is the first step in any design. And once the objective is fixed, then only you can go for the other aspects, or then only you can go for the design, right? So when we talk about the objectives of the design, so there are several things that will come to us. So as I have already pointed out, that in 5G communication technologies, Yes, we are talking about faster and reliable data transfer, but energy management and conservation, yet what we are talking about, energy management and conservation, that is gaining more attention. And that is becoming a very major and indispensable part in this communication research, because the reason is very simple. We want the communication node to be self-sustainable in terms of power. Yes, people are working to make it is a safer communication, a faster and reliable communication, but apart from that, power is also becoming an issue. And that is why to make the communication nodes self-sustainable in terms of power is becoming a very important aspect. And efficient RF energy harvesting technology in a high data rate platform leads towards a greener communication paradigm. That is what we call it as greener or clean say energy, because we already have the sources. We are just say tapping the energy and we are trying to use it for some other purposes. So it is a greener communication paradigm. And wireless charging of low power devices, not only the communication network but some other small appliances, that is also possible. We can wirelessly charge the gadgets. We can wirelessly charge the smaller appliances that is there in our say households, right? And there, this energy can be supplied from the RF energy, because it is continuously emitting, as I have repeatedly said. So now the basic thing, that is the objective is to make the communication nodes self-sustainable and to successfully charge the low power devices and the small appliances. That is what our objective is. So to meet the objective, we have to have a very efficient harvesting mechanism. So that is a system, that is a broad system of RF energy harvesting. That is a broad system. So we have a generator, it is already have an RF generator, so we have multiple sources, as I have talked about, right? So through the transmitting antenna there will be a continuous transmission, right? So through the channel it is there, free space path loss will be there, and it will have a dependence on the operating range also. Means when we talk about operating range, when we are designing our harvesting system, so we have to think about the operating range. Where is our source? Because we know that when your operating range is more, the strength of the RF say wave, that is means the electromagnetic wave, that is also becoming less. So where we are going to harvest means the geographical location, right? Location in the sense that I have a Wi-Fi router in my home, and I am going to harvest the energy within that room only. So then I'll know that what is the energy available to me, energy of the electromagnetic wave available to me that I can harvest. So that is what I am talking about. So that should be known when we are going to design the system. Now the harvesting system, so that will be having one antenna and receiving antenna. Okay, so we have to think about a design of an antenna and antenna gain, then what is the bandwidth, all those things, because what source we are say trying to work with. So depending on that, that antenna design must be there, that we all know. So then we have to have an impedance matching network, that we know, that is always required to transfer the maximum energy from the receiving antenna to the other end, right? So that impedance matching network, that is a, yes, concept wise it is a simple design, and we have to match the impedance so between the source and the destination. Means here your source will be the receiving antenna and the destination will be the rectifier. Means when through this impedance matching network, so you are receiving and it is coming to the rectifier. So rectifier will have to rectify right? To make means to convert the RF signal to a DC, right? So what is the gain? What is the RF to DC power conversion efficiency? This second point is very important. We'll come to that. Means while designing the whole system, this point RF to DC power conversion efficiency, that plays a very important role. A better efficiency will always give you a better performance, that we know. And the number of stages, how many number of stages are required, because in one stage you may not get a sufficient output voltage or a output power. So that is why you may need to increase the number of stages. Then how we will configure the network, what is the selectivity, all those things will come. And once you are rectifying it, so you have to, there has to be a power management unit. So why this power management unit is required? Because once you are rectifying, you are getting the energy, or you are getting the power. So what you are going to do with that power? So either we will be using the power for the for the functioning of its own. Of its own means it will be there in a communication node or in a device. So that will power up the device. That will do the device charging and all, right? That is one thing that can do. And second thing, what it can do, that it can have some excess power that is getting harvested, and that can be say transmitted to some, say, nearby devices or some nearby nodes. And above all, there is one very important aspect of power management system, is that what was the outcome of means the output of your rectifier. Say very simply, if I say my rectifier may give me a 5 bulb, but the device that where we are trying to use the power requires, say, 12 volt, then what to do? Or maybe the reverse situation may happen. The rectifier is giving us a 12 volt, but my device requires a 5 volt, right? So in that case, that power management has to be done. Means some boost or buck conversion may be required. So that also needs to be done. So the things or concept seems to be very simple, but the thing is that we are going to design at a very high frequency. Say in a GSM band, if we are talking about, say, 900 megahertz, 1800 megahertz, or if we are talking about Wi-Fi, what we are using is at 2.4 gigahertz, and the new one that is going to come is around 6 gigahertz. So at a very high frequency we are going to design, and we are having an we are going to have a integrated circuit that will be embedded in the system itself. So the size, the cost, the performance, everything matters, right? So everything matters. So conceptually it seems very simple that we are going to design some rectifier, but how the rectifier is designed, whether you are going to design the rectifier using diode or CMOS, I will come to that. So all those things will matter. So depending on that requirement of the device, the power management unit must be able to manage that. And also what is the generated power, how we are going to use the generated power, that is very important. Whether we are going to use it for our own, or we are going to transmit it to some nearby devices. If we are going to transmit it to some nearby devices, then some wireless power transfer mechanism has to be there. Okay, so I will come to the basic design aspects. So before that, just some facts related to the RF transmission, or the fundamentals of RF transmission. Probably we all know, but we are just putting the facts here. So the electromagnetic waves shows different behavior in accordance with distance, frequency, and conducting environment. That is what I was trying to point it out, that with distance, with frequency, as well as with the conducting environment, the electromagnetic wave will show different behavior. If it is a direct line of sight communication, then strength will be higher. If it is a non-line of sight communication, if there is higher loss, if there is more foliage loss, then strength will be very less. So that is why the conducting environment also plays a role in harvesting also. Then at what frequency we are going to design, that plays a role, because my device, my system, my MOSFET, my circuit must be able to handle that frequency. And the distance we know. With distance, this electromagnetic waves, the strength of electromagnetic waves getting reduced with the square of the distance that we know. So that is why we have to plan accordingly where we are going to place that and what is the strength we are receiving at that point. So as the design parameters are application specific, so the designer needs to select suitable parameters for electromagnetic waves to obtain best result. So that is that we know. Application specific, as we have already talked about, where we are going to design. What is the requirement of that say targeted device. Then the loss of power in space can be characterized by FSPL, free space path loss, so which is the loss of the signal power during propagation in free space. So calculating FSPL requires information about the antenna gain, frequency of the transmitting wave, and distance between the transmitter and the receiver. That is why the antenna also plays a role, the receiving antenna, because antenna gain will play a role, and above all the frequency of the transmitting wave and the distance of the transmitter and the receiver. So when I know all this, then only I'll be able to say calculate the FSPL, and then only I'll be able to say go for a design, or I will then only know that, that is the requirement, or that is what we are getting, and my goal is this, my requirement is this. Then only I'll be able to say think about the design. So is it okay till now? Okay. So let us proceed. So we have the basic system. Basic means the diagram that I have shown just a few slides back. That is the generic diagram, and the basic system of energy harvesting, if we are talking about RF energy, so that is the basic system. So I have already talked about a matching circuit that is always required, and here we require a high efficiency low power rectifier. That is how the requirement is, because we need a high efficiency, high conversion efficiency. Then only the rectification will be say, successful, and my devices should be able to handle the high frequency. And after that, the power management unit is required. I have already talked about the requirement of power management unit, and how the power management unit needs to deal different situations. So I have talked about. Now talking about the impedance matching network, that is simple in low power consumption, say electrical system. Your power leakage during transmission may lead to energy inefficiency. So in a impedance matching network will ensure that maximum power say gets transferred from the RF source to the load. Load in the sense is that here we are trying to transfer the maximum power from the antenna to the rectifier. That is what we are trying to do. So for RFEH application, the receiving antenna is considered as the source, while rectifier voltage multiplier, that is the load. An impedance mismatch between the source and the load creates reflected power flow in the circuit, so that lowers the efficiency. So we want to trap the whole energy that is coming to the antenna, and that is why we must have a impedance matching network. It will ensure that maximum power is coming at the input of our rectifier. Now when we talk about rectifier, as we may know that there can be different techniques of designing the rectifier. And the core of the system, I call the rectifier to be the core of the system, because this is the unit where this RF energy is getting converted to the DC energy, and there the efficiency matters, because what was the RF energy available to me, and how efficiently it is getting converted. So we want a very good conversion efficiency. So there are different techniques. There may be diode based techniques, diode based circuits. Techniques means we are talking about circuits. So there may be diode based circuits, there may be CMOS based circuits, right? But the issue here means why we choose diode and why we'll choose the CMOS or the MOSFET. So that is a important aspect. Now, while choosing that, we have three things that needs to be considered. One is the power consumption. Means when we have a device, what is the power consumption of the device? Second thing is the silicon area. What is the actual silicon area my transistor or device is taking? And third one is the fabrication feasibility. When we are choosing a device, it should be feasible to uh, fabricate means we have to be able to fabricate easily. So both from the power consumption, silicon area point of view, so it is seen that MOSFETs are showing say better outcome, because power consumption is also less in MOSFETs or CMOS based circuits, and silicon area is also less. And since we have all the other components that is mostly coming from the CMOS in the whole system, so then it is become easier for say fabrication also. So that is why in most of the cases we see that CMOS based circuits are getting so much attention, because we are talking about integrating it in a chip. So that is why in most of the cases, if you look at the research, the current research, you will see that people are talking about, most of the cases people are talking about say MOSFET based circuits. uh, so these are the three factors we have to consider. So this is I'm just giving you a full, I'm just giving you a simple say um, example of a rectifier. So I'm coming to the device, then only we'll be able to relate it to the quantum. So now this is a very simple arrangement, a very simple arrangement of a rectifier. We call it Dixon surge pump. So that is actually a modified Dixon surge pump from the original idea. It is a very simple two transistor based device. Two MOSFETs we have two capacitors. Concept wise, very simple. We have the input, so RF signal is coming here. This is our output. So this RF input that we are getting, so we'll have a positive cycle, we'll have negative cycle, right? So when there is a negative cycle, when at that point we have a negative cycle, then what will happen here? This emitter is connected, so this will be grounded. So that will have a less potential to in comparison to the point that is getting grounded. We are getting a negative here. So that is why this device M1 will be on state, in the on state, but M2 will be in off state, because we are getting a negative at the gate. So that will be off state. So now the current will flow through CC through M1. So means there is a surging of this capacitor CC at a negative cycle. And at the next, when there is a positive cycle, then what will happen? Obviously, this M1 device, M1 will this is an NMOS, so that will be in the off state, and M2 will be in on state. It is as simple as that. So now what will happen? Now there is a path through CC, M2, and C0. So the surges that were there at the CC, so will get transferred to C0, right? So this path is through CC, M2, and C0. So there will be a transfer of surge from CC to C0. So that is a very simple idea or simple concept of the rectification using CMOS, and that is basically the concept of Dixon surge pump. So there are lots of modifications. This is a simple one. There will be lots of modifications, lots of other configurations also. There is no single say configuration of a device, of a circuit. Lots of configuration. This is I am just giving a very brief and very simple idea about the rectifier. Now here this device will play a very important role. That is what we are trying to show, because the efficiency of conversion will depend on the device, because what is the threshold voltage, and what is the current flow, that will play a role. I'll come to that. Now, that is what we are trying to show, actually, one after the another. Now, what are the different aspects of rectifier design? Though it looks very simple concept wise, but what are the different aspects? So one is the power conversion efficiency. I am repeatedly talking about the power conversion efficiency. The power conversion efficiency plays a very say important role. So this is basically the power output by power input. So what is the power we are getting at the output divided by the power output. So if we take the ratio, so and the percentage, if we take, that is the power conversion efficiency percentage we can have. And what is the minimum output power? That is what say I was talking about. So I may have a single stage, but what is the output power we are getting? Then to enhance the output power, what we will be doing, we may have a cascading. So we that is one thing, the minimum output power that is given. And uh, or what is that will come with the requirement, what is our targeted device. So depending on the targeted device, we have to think about what is the output power we require at the output of the circuit. And second is the frequency of operation. Frequency of operation will be important, because what we are trying to harvest, whether it is a GSM signal, whether it is a Wi-Fi signal, so if it is in gigahertz or in megahertz range, my device must support that. So I have to calculate the transit frequency, I have to tailor the width and length of the device. So all those things will come. And the fourth one is the power delivery to the load. When I have a load, because load may vary, so if I have different load, what is the actual power delivery to the load and how to manage that, right? So that is coming to the picture. So these are the four say aspects in rectifier design, and while designing the rectifier, we have to think about all these. So now, to meet all these requirements, we have two things. One is the circuit design based concept, and another is the device model based concept. Now, okay, so means there are few things that can be improved, say power conversion efficiency, up to some point, depending on what are the circuit you are using. So by changing the circuit configuration, I can have some improvement. Then the output power or the power delivery, that also can be improved. But beyond certain limit, there may not be possible to enhance it further by having some circuit based design. And then we have to modify the device itself, means what device we are trying to use, means we are using there, right? So I'll try to show what are the things. Now, in circuit design, uh, what are the things that we can do is the enhancing the current flow. That is one thing, because power output, if I need to have a good power output, the current flowing through the devices also must be high. Then only I will be able to get a good output power. So there are techniques to increase it. Circuit configurations will be say, able to enhance the current flow, reducing the leakage, because we have CMOS based configurations, we have other configurations which will be able to reduce the leakage. Because if there are some leakage currents, then ultimately there is a loss, right? There is a static power or a dynamic power loss. In this case, we are talking about mostly the static power. So there will be a loss. So if there is a loss, then power output that we are experiencing, that will be also less. So that also can be done by having some circuit alterations. So though we are not talking much about that. Proper filtering, because I need a proper DC, I need as less ripple as possible. That should be the aim of a rectifier. Ideally zero ripple, but practically it is not so. But the AC component that we are having, that should be very very low in nano, or in say nanovolt or something, right? Or even less than that. Then the threshold voltage compensation. Now this one is very important. That is where we are emphasizing in, or most of the people are emphasizing on. People are trying it with device, with circuit also. Now what is circuit threshold voltage compensation and why is it required? Say, I'm just trying to explain it very simply. Say if I have a sine wave of 1 volt, right? So from 0 to 1 it will vary, it will peak at 1 volt, right? Now what is the threshold voltage of my device? Say it is 600 millivolt. Now what is the characteristics of a MOSFET? That you have to apply minimum 600 millivolt, if that is the threshold voltage of the device, to the gate to make the device on, right? So my input, that is varying from 0 to 1 volt, so means from 0 to 600 millivolt my device will not be on. If I expect that it is a positive cycle as I have shown in the say circuit, now this from 0 to 600 device will not get on. Beyond 600 millivolt, 600 to say 1000 millivolt, my device will be on. So my rectification is actually happening from 600 millivolt to 1000 millivolt, right? So below 600 millivolt, actually rectification is not happening. So means we were whatever we are expecting at the output, we are not actually getting, because only for this time where my input voltage is say changing from 600 millivolt to 1 volt, there only the rectification is there. So that will make the PC power conversion efficiency lower, right? So that is the aspect. Now how this threshold voltage can be compensated, or how we can make the device on below the threshold voltage. So there are some circuit based techniques also that can be done. Then aspect ratio tailoring. Aspect ratio, we can means the W by L ratio that can be tailored to have a better current flow. So that also can be done. That is a circuit based technique. And other device based techniques that is important is the aspects here is your smaller area, because we always want a smaller, as small area as possible. You know, there is a continuous miniaturization through generations. Devices are continuously getting smaller and smaller, and we want to save the area because silicon is known to be the costliest real estate, we know. So cost effectiveness also will come with the area. And also we want a low leakage. That is important. That is where the link to the quantum device will come. The low leakage, we want a low leakage current, and offset current should be ideally 0, right? So that is one. We want a low leakage current as possible in the off state, right? We don't want, and that can be modified in the device model only, device geometry alterations, or device model to not just sticking to the conventional MOSFETs. I think we are all aware that we are not sticking to the conventional MOSFET structure. There are lots of alterations all around gates, double gates, FinFETs, all those. So there can be different device model, maybe material also different in many of the cases. And second thing is optimized device voltage. As I have talked about the importance of the threshold voltage when we are talking about the threshold voltage compensation. So here the threshold voltage can be adjusted in the device model also, and from material to material also the threshold voltage will vary. Means rather than silicon, we can have some other material also to have that. Now, as we are say talking about the MOSFETs, as I have already pointed out, and all of us are aware that MOSFETs are becoming tinier, and it is becoming faster, and it is also becoming less power hungry. Right now, devices are smaller and smaller, and that is how it is becoming faster also, and power requirement is also getting less. Right, so geometric scaling is continuous. All the say layers of the device are getting continuously getting scaled, right? So we are coming at the nano regime, and If we scale down the oxide thickness, all of us are aware about the geometry and the structure of a MOSFET. So if we scale down the MOSFET oxide, the silicon dioxide layer, so by having a thinner oxide, what we can have is that we can have more surge to the channel. More surge is possible at the channel, and that will basically boost the current in the MOSFET, and thereby it will make a faster device. So that is possible conceptually. If we are making a device oxide silicon dioxide layer thinner, so we are going to get a faster device, I can say. But the problem here is, if we scale the oxide layer, scaling down the oxide layer to a or beyond certain limit, then what will happen, that it will increase the offstate current, because there is a leakage, there is a heavy leakage, right? So that is a very important disadvantage. We cannot bear such a very heavy leakage current. We actually want zero current in the offstate. Offstate means when threshold voltage is, sorry, the gate voltage is less than the threshold. So we want that the offset current be zero, though ideally it is sorry, practically it is not possible, but we want a very low say offset current, we all know. So now that is the problem. When we are making it thinner, offset current is becoming higher, right? So if we sense the material, your performance may be higher, means better, means offset current may be less, but still it is not very sufficient. Offset current is still there because electrons are getting tunneled through the oxide. So that is a very problematic state. Electrons are getting tunneled if the oxide thickness is becoming very less. So we need to replace the MOSFET. Replace the MOSFET in the sense that we have to have some other device model that will effectively deal with this situation. Now, how to deal with? That is the issue, and that is actually the point where we are thinking about some different mechanisms. And here, can we turn the disadvantage into advantage? That is the point. Actually, we are talking about that more tunneling is happening, so that is why offset current or leakage current is too high. That is a disadvantage. Now, can we turn this disadvantage into an advantage? That is actually the concept where from this quantum say FETs, or it is known as tunneling FETs also, that is come to the reality or coming to the reality. Right, so that is a pictorial say depiction of say quantum tunneling. I think all of us are aware about. So by having a classical say concept, if I see, so if there happens to be an energy barriers, so if electrons are there, so they will not be able to penetrate, they will bounce back. But if we explain it from the quantum mechanical point of view, means if we explain it from the wave nature of the electron, and if the say energy barrier is very thin below certain limit, then electrons can say successfully penetrate through. And that is what the quantum tunneling is, very simply to talk about the quantum tunneling. And that is the pictorial depiction, and that is what is happening. That is what is happening with us now. As we have seen that when there is always a tendency uh, of miniaturization, we know we cannot get rid of it. We need to have more and more transistor in the same area, in the same die, and we have a better performance. We need a faster device. That is what it is, and the trend is moving in at that rate. So we want a faster device, and we want a smaller device, because cost effectiveness will also come, and processing also. And in energy harvesting case also, these devices, as we have talked about, we are sticking up or we are talking about the threshold. So threshold voltage, we need to be we need to set it to a low value, such that maximum energy can be or maximum power that is available at the input can be say rectified. And also we want it to process it very very fast rate, right? So and we want the area of our circuit, energy harvesting circuit, to be very less. So that is why there is a possibility, we will understand after discussing the quantum phase, that there is a possibility of using this quantum phase in the energy harvesting system also. Though many people are not working in the domain. If we look at, it is not that everyone is looking at the quantum devices in or using it in the RF energy harvesting say systems. But yes, possibility is there, and people are starting to work in that dimension. So one thing we understand, that when we are doing the miniaturization, tunneling, we cannot stop. That is always, that must be there, because your barriers are becoming thin, right? But as we have already said, we can turn this phenomenon to our advantage, and that actually makes the TFET a reality. So a new device is coming now. How MOSFET basically works? We understand it works by raising and lowering the energy barrier to control the flow of current. No? We have an NPN or PNP say regions, right? Drain, channel, and source. So if drain and sources are N, and P is the means that is the substrate, p-type substrate, if it is there, so then we can have the channel in between. And when we apply the potential between the drain and source, then there is a flow of electrons. So that is how we do, we lower the barrier, right? We lower the barrier, and current flows. But in TFET, the concept is not that. We keep the energy barrier high, and we are trying to make it overlap. We are trying to the device switches on and off by altering the likelihood that the electrons on one side of the barrier, I will show in the probably next slide, on one side of the barrier will penetrate to the other side. So technique is a bit different. In the earlier case, we were lowering the barrier, allowing the current flow, but here we are keeping the energy barrier high, but we are increasing the likelihood of electron penetration by having the overlapping. I will show. So this paves the way of a faster, denser, and energy efficient circuit. That is what our important, or what we are trying to emphasize. Why we are trying to talk about the quantum devices in RF energy harvesting. That is actually the reason. The faster, denser, and energy efficient circuit we require, and that is how this will be helpful, right? Now, before going to the actual TFET, let us just talk something about the MOSFET. Then we'll understand better why this TFETs or quantum FETs is also known as QFETs are gaining say much attention. So in a MOSFET, as we have already talked about, it is an NPN or PNP configuration, right? So the PN junctions that will provide the electronic barrier. Normally, we have two PN junctions, right? This side and that side. So that will provide an electronic barrier, or an current flow, right? So in N channel case, the positive potential that will do the barrier lowering, which is reverse in p channel case, right? So we have the channel in between, channel is getting created, and when we apply the positive potential, your barrier is getting lowered, right? So, and that is how the current flow is there. But the barrier lowering is successful, yes, we are working with, but it has physical limit. Physical limit is in the sense that if barrier is getting lowered, like our say DIBL and all those cases, I think people are aware about that. So there are leakage currents, right? So that will create problem. So that is why it has some physical limit also. We cannot lower the barrier to any extent. So now transistor needs certain amount of voltage to be switched on and off, And this is due to the fact that electrons and holes are in constant motion due to thermal energy. So most electromagnetic carriers can cross the barrier. So we have a sufficient voltage, right, to switch on the device. That is how the concept of our threshold voltage and the potential that needs to be applied in drain and source that comes. So now at room temperature, what happens? The current flowing over the barrier that increases by a factor of 10 when energy barrier is lowered by 60 millivolt. So that is a very big issue. Means every decade of electron current change, it requires a change of 60 millivolt. And why it is serious? Because it happens below the threshold voltage. That is a serious issue. The drain induced barrier lowering, DIBL, and all those. So that happens, right? So this increase of the say leakage current, that is 10 times every 60 millivolt. That is a very serious factor, and that is almost in all the MOSFETs. That is the minimum value. 60 millivolt, that is the minimum value, and people are not able to go beyond that with the MOSFET structure. So now, as I have already said, all this happens below the threshold only, right? So this is known as sub-threshold region, because below the threshold, and 60 millivolt per decade, that is known as the minimum sub-threshold swing. Now we want this value to be as less as possible, this 60 millivolt to be as less as possible. Means we don't want that every 60 millivolt there happens to be a 10 times increase. We want to be a much lower than that, right? So to have a lower power consumption, these values should be as low as possible. So this necessitates a low threshold voltage, right? But the thing is that this sub threshold swing, that was not a very big issue when your operating voltage was very high. Very means the earlier generations of MOSFETs, they were trying to use a higher voltage, right? 5 volt, 3 volt, and maybe up to say 1 volt also. That was not a very big issue, because we were having a large logic state difference. If I need to define a 0 and 1, we have lots of room to define. There is no issue. And also these devices were designed to have a very high uh, on off say current ratio, means on state current divided by off state current. That was very high. So this was not a very big issue, because we have a large room in the range of the operating voltage. So that is not of a much problem. And that is why this sub threshold swing, that is becoming a problem when we are talking about low power devices, means when the operating voltages are becoming less and less, right? So now there are other issues related to, we need a very higher operating voltage due to CMOS chain also, because if we look at the CMOS based circuits in many of the realization of the gates, so we'll see that we require say 2 MOSFETs, in some of the cases 3 MOSFETs, right, in the series. So if in the series we have to use, then what should be the operating voltage that we require? Because in the series we are the top MOSFET may be getting the maximum, but what it will get at the lower end, right? So that is why it should be sufficiently higher. The overall operating voltage should be sufficiently higher. So that is one issue. And also, while adjusting the process variability, voltage range is getting wider and wider. It means we have different devices, and while doing the fabrication or processing, there is a variability. All the MOSFET devices that we are trying to fabricate is not exactly same. So while adjusting that, your voltage range is also getting wider. That is another issue. So the voltage requirement and leakage problem, these are the primary limitations when we are talking about MOSFET. And why we are now thinking about this quantum phase is, if I sum up whatever we are talking about, is mainly due to these two issues. One is the voltage requirement, we need a higher voltage. Now we are even trying to go below 1 volt, right? But with MOSFET, there are lots of issues we cannot do, because we have the sub-threshold swing, we have the CMOS chain problem, all those problems are there, right? So that is a very problematic aspect, right? Sub-threshold swing creates a lots of problem, and also the leakage problem. When it is becoming thinner and thinner, leakage problem is getting say higher. So that is the issue. Now that is the depiction of how the normal MOSFETs, conventional MOSFETs, and your TFET or QFET basically works. So quantum FETs, as I have already said, this is what our Ancennal MOSFET is. We apply some potential, so there is a sense in the in the barrier. So barrier lowering is there, and here what we do, here this is the source. Source is P. Intrinsic material is there at the say channel side. We are not doping it because we have say same electron, same number of electrons and holes that is there in the intrinsic, right? And we have N, so PIN or NIP, both are possible. So here your band structure will be something like this. If I look at, we have the conduction band of the P source that is lying here higher. Intrinsic side is somewhere here, and in N side is again somewhere here. Now if I apply, or if I do some mechanism, if I apply some voltage mainly to suppress this one, right, to suppress this one, such that this valence band of the source and the conduction band of the channel, that is getting overlapped, right? If we can see here, so it is getting overlapped, so means this is a tunnel window. So we are opening a tunnel window here. So now electrons will now move from this to this, right? So conduction band and valence band is there. So now interband say movement, right? Now these voltage, whatever we need to apply, that is not very high, that is very small in comparison to the earlier concept of MOSFET, where we need to apply a large say voltage, or we need a very high operating voltage. So that is getting less due to this factor, because here we are just need to open the tunnel window just to make it an overlapping. So the configuration used in QFET or TFET, that is a PIN or NIP, and when the energy barrier has a thickness that is below 10 nanometer, there is a small but non-zero probability that an electron that starts from on one side will appear at the other side. So means below say 10 nanometer, the probability becoming non-zero. But yes, some of electrons will pass, some will not. So that is our task, is to increase the probability. So in TFET, what we do, we apply the potential at the control gate, and we increase the say probability of penetration, right? So electrons will now tunnel through. We will increase the tunneling probability, and a little potential at the gate is enough to do that. So this makes the source conduction band and channel valence band to overlap, and thereby opening a tunneling window, as I have already shown in the diagram. So there is an overlapping now with the say application of the potential, and if there is an overlapping, so there is a band to band, means valence band and conduction band, electrons are moving. So that is what your QFET and TFET is. So one thing we understand, or we get, that it is an interband tunneling, because conduction band, valence band, and much smaller voltage swing. In most of the cases, most of the designs, though it is not very easy to say that in all the designs there is always much smaller voltage swing, but in most of the design it is possible. So much smaller voltage swing is there, and only little voltage is required to have the overlapping. We just need a small voltage to make the device on. So that is what the QFET and TFET basically gives us, and that is why um, this tunnel FETs or quantum FETs are very important. So is it okay till this point?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, just 1 minute. So, as we are talking about the quantum FETs, and we are saying that quantum FETs will give us say a better device in comparison to our normal MOSFET, in the sense that low operating voltage is enough, and it will give us a very less leakage current. But there are issues also. There are issues in designing the QFETs. Because one thing that it is seen, or many of the researchers are talking about, is that silicon and germanium, they are not great for tunneling because they are indirect band gap materials. So to have the tunneling, they again take extra energy. So that is not giving us a very faster device, and that is showing in terms of energy also, that is taking extra energy. So that is not showing a very good say tunneling. So, and with silicon and germanium, it is seen that on state current is very less. So it is, in comparison to our conventional MOSFET, if we compare, it is very less. It is very, very less. So that is a real issue, and that is a real problem. So now, though it is so, in case of our on-state current, when we talk about the gallium antimonide or indium arsenide, means our 3 4 compounds, there are different say examples, or people are working with different say combinations of indium, gallium and arsenic. So it is seen that it is giving a very good, it is reported that it is giving a very good on state current. So that also can be say improved or enhanced, but not with silicon and germanium till now. So in many of the cases, it is also seen, though we have already said that 60 millivolt per decade, that is creating a lots of problem. So it is seen that in many of the cases, it is still there. 60 millivolt per decade still exists in QFETs also, and this is basically due to the chemical dangling bonds. Some unsatisfied bonds are there, that basically say creates the defect states, and that is how say it creates, it is still there. But many device modifications are there, and with that modifications, many recent research that reports that it can be reduced up to 20 millivolt per decade. So that's great, from 60 millivolt per decade to 20 millivolt per decade. It's really great, because there is a 10 times increase, means that is becoming very, very less, and uh, we are saying that that will be a successful design. So now there is another problem that is coming, and that again needs to be say dealt with while talking about the say this device modeling, is that source to drain tunneling. Because channels are getting shorter and shorter. We are having the geometric scaling all over, 3D geometric scaling. So channels are also getting smaller and smaller, and it so happens that the channel is becoming so small that there is a possibility of having direct tunneling from source to drain. So that is a serious impact again, because if it is so, then the device will not get off, though we are making it off, but there will be tunneling directly from channel to drain. So that has to be avoided. So while designing, that has to be avoided. And the fifth point is the process variability. So process variability will basically mean that since our devices are say becoming smaller, it is becoming more sensitive also, because there are less number of surges is there, right? If area of the channel is very small, so the number of say carriers that is there, that is also becoming very small. So now with the process variation, if there happens to be a minor variation, process variation means that is coming from the fabrication point of view. When we do the batch processing, we cannot expect that all the devices that we are fabricating in a batch will show exactly and accurately same parameters. We cannot expect that, and that is never possible. So that process variability creates some problem, in the sense that if there happens to be a minor variation in all those issues, then there is a significant change in the performance. So that is why that also has to be dealt with. So these are some of the issues. Few issues are addressed, few issues are people are addressing, because these are some recent things. So tunneling concept is not recent, but the device modeling and all those things are say recent. People are trying to do it, say different devices, different say techniques and different device models are people are trying with. So these are some of the issues I have tried to put forward to you. So maybe some of you are working in this domain, so may know something better about this one. But these are some of the issues that can be dealt with, and researchers can actually deal with this. So this is one say diagram, one SEM say diagram. So where a source and gate is there, here there is a bridge like or complex structure for electronic isolation, and this is the control gate, this is drain, so this tunneling can happen here. So sorry, here, so your drain and gate. So this is just a pictorial depiction of a actual fabrication. I have taken it from some source. So that was all about the quantum FET and its possibility to use in different aspects, as well as I was trying to show how quantum FET can be a very useful component in RF energy harvesting, and why it is so. I have tried to show. Now there is another say technique people have recently tried with or conceptualized, that is, though it is not it is in a very nascent state, but I have tried to put forward to you, that is a very recent one, very nascent one, that quantum rectification we say by using graphene. Now here the basic idea is in in whatever we were discussing till now, we are discussing about realizing a transistor. Sorry. We are discussing about realizing a rectifier, right? A rectifier circuit design. But here people are saying that rather than designing a rectifier, because in higher frequency, when you are going to the higher gigahertz and the terahertz range of frequencies, it is very difficult to design a rectifier. uh, because one of the very major issue is from the material point as well as from the circuit point also, we have seen that though we can design it, but it needs operating temperature to be super cold, means at super cold temperature only it can work. So that is really a very say problematic state. So that is what people are trying to do, is that can we have a electric field that steers the radio wave through a device to a DC current, means directly I have a device, I will apply some electric field, and I'll steer the radio frequency that is coming directly to a DC current by using the quantum properties. At quantum mechanical level, can we do that? And for that, materials uh, own electrons can be steered to move in one direction. That is the idea. So we'll use it. We'll steer the electrons in one direction, and thereby at the output we'll get a direct current, a DC current. So rather than designing a circuit-based, say, rectifier at quantum mechanical level, people are trying to do. And graphene is a material people are working with, because it is expected that graphene can work, or this system can be designed by using graphene as a material at room temperature only. That is the case. So graphene electrons, they show symmetrical behavior in the sense that if I apply external force, that the same force is experienced at all the directions. That is called the symmetry, some symmetrical behavior. Now that needs to be broken. Means we don't want the graphene electrons to behave symmetrically to some external forces. We want them to behave asymmetrically, and that technique they are calling as skew scattering. So skew scattering means the electrons that is near, that will experience a different force, the distance one will experience a different force. So ultimately it will be able to steer all the electrons in one direction. Conceptually it is easy, but to actually implement a device, it is not very easy. It is really very tough to do that. Though I am just putting forward the concept, it is not commercialized. People, it is still in the R&D. So people are trying to do at the quantum level, rectification at the quantum level. So that is a very new thing, and graphene is the material people are using, as I have already said, because people are expecting that we can do it with graphene at the room temperature. So some successes are there, but do device wise implementation, it is still, I think it is not still there, but people are trying to work with. Okay. Now, this was all about the rectification and how it is related to the say rectification, how the quantum concepts are actually related, can be related to the rectification from the device point of view as well as from the in the material itself. Now to talk about the power management unit, as I have already say mentioned, we need the voltage regulation at the output, so that has to be handled with the say power management unit. Output conditioning, also depending on the targeted device, the output conditioning has to be done, and it needs to keep track of the power profile of the transceiver or the system, whatever is there. Continuous tracking has to be there, and we need an efficient storage mechanism. If we want to store, if it is a complete battery less system, then things are different. But if there is some amount of battery which will be getting say recharged every time there is an excess energy, so we need an efficient energy mechanism, sorry, storage mechanism, so that there is ideally zero leakage. And this power management unit is also responsible, as I have already said, responsible for transferring of power to the other node. If we have more energy, then yes, we can transfer it to the say neighboring nodes too. So this is an example of a DC to DC converter. This is a very simple say idea. I think you may be aware about. This is a very simple. So our rectifier, RF rectifier input will be going to a buck say converter or a boost converter. So depending on the arrangement, so this can be made a buck or a buck boost converter. So whatever is required. So depending on what is the output voltage or power available at the say RF rectifier, and what is the requirement at the target device. If the requirement at the target device is high, then you need to boost, and if you need to have um, a lower requirement, then you need to buck it. So this is an example of a boost converter. So where we can adjust the output voltage. Say we have some 1 volt here, we have designed actually this one. We have some input, say 1 volt here, so we can successfully get a 5 volt or 3 volt, say depending on the requirement. Now here the main aspect is or the main thing that is playing is by this inductor L1, the frequency of operation of this MOSFET. The frequency, we have applied one say wave, a rectangular wave here, sorry, a square wave here, square pulse here. So this frequency has a direct relation with the output, and this inductor value has a direct relation with the input. So to have a better efficiency, to have a better input, we have to think about what is the frequency we can apply, because my device also should support. And along with that, what will be the value of this inductor? So we always want the inductor value to be as less as possible, because more the value of the inductor will be bulkier, because we are talking about the IC implementation. So we are not talking about a discrete level implementation. So we want a optimized value of inductor. Always we are all aware that we always say optimization, because we cannot get something very high at the cost of nothing. This is not possible. If you want to improve something, then there is some cost. So that is why we always need to optimize. So we need to optimize the value of this inductor, as well as we have to look at the frequency, what frequency of the pulses that we are applying. So that is a simple, very simple example. So here, as I have already said, switching frequency, that is there. So that is a very important aspect. Second one is the ripple reduction. So how we can reduce the ripple. And second is silicon area, as I have already said, and we are all aware about also, that silicon area should be as less as possible. It should be an optimal area. And one thing is the inductor, because inductor can take a large area. So that is why optimizing the value of inductor is a very important aspect while designing this circuit. So though conceptually these are simple thing, but to realize in the integrated circuit, there are lots of issues. There are lots of things that needs to be optimized. And settling time means the transient response, how fast it is responding. So that is a very important aspect. So here these are the four design emphasis of a DC to DC converter. So now let us just talk something about the storage system, and then we'll talk something about the quantum battery, how here also the quantum concept can help us to design a efficient storage system. So in an energy harvesting system, our output energy, that should remain constant over time. That we always know. That is not only in energy harvesting, in other state storage devices also, we want that the output energy that remains constant over the time. So means the same average power in the time interval should be maintained according to the load system. Load will be different, so your average power may slight vary, but it should maintain. So your storage may not be required if we are amount of power consumption by the device is always less than what is generated. Okay, so if we are designing, and if we are not trying to have it, and if we are saying that we want a batteryless system, and we are already generating that one, and we are only using for our own purpose, we are not storing that, yes, storage may not be required. But while having the requirement of a storage system, because in some of the cases there may be deficit at some time, right? Energy harvesting or the harvesting energy may not be or maybe less than the say average power. So at that time we are saying it to be deficit. So for that, in some of the cases it may so require that we need to have some say smaller battery that will continuously get recharged or store the excess amount, and that can be used when there is a deficit of power, right? So that can be done. So while having the requirement of storage element, the estimation of energy consumed by the load and that of energy supplied to the transducer, that has to be done. So we have to estimate what is the energy we are generating, what is the energy required of its own. If there is excess energy, what we'll do, whether we are storing it or whether we are storing sending it to some nearby nodes or some nearby units. So that has to be estimated, right? So this is a definition of average power, right? Small ps, so in the duration of capital T, so we can estimate the average power. We all know that. So two situations may arise. One is deficit energy and excess energy. So my instantaneous power may be less than the average power. So that means for a specific time duration. So that means this is deficit energy. If my instantaneous power is higher than the average power for a specific duration, that is excess energy. So two situations are there, deficit and excess energy, right? And the energy collected and sent to the storage element, so that will be within a certain margin. So we can have the average power that is there, so it will be bounded by two extremums, energy minimum and energy maximum. So we can have that, and if I have the excess energy, so that can be sent to the storage element. Now, for any wearable say devices or wireless sensor networks, necessity is to eliminate the need or replace the or recharge the battery, right? So if we can totally replace the battery, it's fine. Or we don't want to replace the battery every time, right? So otherwise, there will be no meaning of self-sufficiency. So the battery is always to be maintained to the energy required by the device, and the total energy that must be greater than what is consumed by the load, means a positive energy, and that whatever is there at the battery. So the total energy that is available, if I include the battery, that can be accumulated or that can be calculated as what is there at the battery, what is there at the what is there, it is getting generated, what is getting consumed, and due to the leakage. These are two minus. So if we accumulate all, that is the total energy available to us in a storage system. Now, this point, this leakage, the power leakage should be as minimum as possible. If I am having a storage system, if I need to maintain it, then I want the leakage to be as less as possible, and that is why the requirement of a very good storage mechanism is required. It may be smaller or it needs to be smaller. We don't want a bulkier storage system, we want a smaller storage system. And along with a say smaller say storage system, we want an efficient storage system, in the sense that we need very low leakage. That is as simple as that. Now, before going to the battery technology, let us just simply talk about the parameters. Because when we talk about designing something, we have to evaluate its performance. And when we try to evaluate its performance, we need some evaluation parameters. So one is the operation range. So operation distance is related to frequency, as we have already said. Special consideration for implantable devices that is there in our maybe implanted in our body, right? So what is the distance where we are trying to harvest, as we have already said. So that is why we have to specify what is the operating range of my device. RF to DC conversion efficiency, that is a very important aspect, PC. So the ratio between the amount of power applied to the load and that is retrieved by the antenna. So your P output, power output by the power input, right? So it covers the efficiency of the rectifier, voltage multiplier, storage elements, so including everything. The total, actually the total or the cumulative power conversion efficiency, or the final power conversion efficiency, that can be say found out, or that has say actually influences from all the sections: rectifier, voltage multipliers, or means DC to DC converters, storage elements, all those. Then the Q factors, you need to have a good Q factor is required. So energy stored by energy dissipated. So that is coming for this resonator Q factor, that is that can be calculated. We need a very good value. Sensitivity. So defined as the minimum, defined, there is a mistake. So defined as the minimum limit of incident power that is required to trigger the operation of the system, right? So what is the minimum power that we require to harvest? Very simply, I can say. So that will again depend on what kind of circuit we are using, what kind of device we are using. That is why we are talking about these quantum possibilities. So sensitivity should be very high. Then only your harvested power also will be high. Efficiency also will be high. So very low power signal also should be possible to harvest. Output power characterized by load voltage and current. So it should be compatible with the specific application, that we all know. For a specific application, that should be there. right? And it should not vary much. If load is varying, it should not vary very much. Okay, it should tolerate within one range. It should show us a constant performance. Okay, so now talking about battery technologies, there are a lot. There are different things people are talking about. There are different technologies people are trying. So some of the say technology have some advantages, and some others are, or at the same time, that is having some disadvantages also. So silicon based batteries we have to replace your graphite anode or silicon, eh, with silicon with due to your higher binding but low electrical conductivity. That is one issue. So slow diffusion rate, it results instability, right? So these are some of the issues. Room temperature sodium sulfur, so it is similar to lithium ion, but problem is that it can operate above 300 degree Celsius. So proton batteries, that is also concept. Few of the things are conceptualized, but due to some disadvantages, they cannot be really employed or really designed or implemented. So efforts has been devoted to the generation of high performance proton exchange membrane fuel cell. Challenge is high cost, transportation and storage of hydrogen gas. Graphite dual ion, large scale stationary storage of electricity, so that is possible. Aluminum ion, abundant, inexpensive, and readily available as SIP, and several promising structures are there. Nickel zinc, cost effective, safe, environment friendly. Potassium ion, electrochemical performance of potassium ion batteries. So salt water, paper polymer, so that is a good one. Inexpensive, environment friendly, and self-sustainable. They could have enormous applications in biosensors and future electronic devices. However, main limitation is the low performance. So people are working with say paper polymer because it is inexpensive, environment friendly also. So few people are working there to enhance the performance. So there are lots of things. Some of the things like your magnesium batteries, they are having energy density, higher energy density, but it is not rechargeable. So that is again one issue. So now, as we understand that we want a very efficient battery system. So while we need a efficient battery system, one very important aspect in a battery system uh, is that we need a very low, or ideally we need a zero leakage, right? So that is why quantum battery, where it is also based on the quantum mechanical tunneling, so that is coming to the existence, and that is actually derived from the concept of floating gate MOS transistor. So quantum mechanical tunneling is there, and as we have seen, we have a floating gate there, we have drain, we have source. And if I show the diagram here, so this is one floating gate transistor. It is a cross section of an FZMOS transistor, and it is magnified around say 10,000 somewhere. It was written, I think. Okay, somewhere means around say 10,000 magnification. So here two polygates we have seen in the diagram, poly 1 and poly 2. So now this poly 1 gate, that is the floating one. We can see that is the floating one, and it is totally isolated from all the other active areas of the device, right? So it is surrounded from all its sides by high quality insulator, and under the right bottom part of this floating gate, we can see the insulator layer. It is a very thin insulator layer, we can see. So now this region, that is the place of say tunneling, where the tunneling happens. So now over the floating gate of the say FZMOS, means this structure. So there is one gate we have seen here, poly 2. There may be multiple also, which does not have any electrical contact with the floating gate. So they are called the control gates. It may be one or it may be multiple. So the process of electron tunneling to the floating gate, so that can be uh, done between the SIP substrate and the control gate relatively at high voltage source. If I apply some high voltage source, then that can happen. So electrons are attracted by the appeared high electric field, and it will jump through the tunnel oxide in the floating gate and charging it in this way negatively, right? So because of the increasing number of tunnel electrons say inside it, the potential of the uh, floating gate that changes, and because of the floating gate is perfectly isolated, so once we can do the charge or charging is done, then it can keep the charge for a very long period. That is the basic emphasis. Actually, there is electrical isolation in this floating gate, so once you can charge it through the tunneling, so it can hold the charge very effectively, very efficiently. And that is why this say FGMOS gives us a very promising uh, say battery technology. It can lead to a very promising battery technology. So that is what the concept of quantum battery is. And if we need to, or if we can connect uh, millions of transistors, means this is the structure of one say FGMOS. So if we have multiple or thousands of say transistors, so that is connected in parallel, then we can have a very efficient design of a battery, or a sufficiently which will be sufficiently giving us a output voltage, output current, right? So all the sources, drains and substrate that are connected together in one network, means if this is one device, then I have multiple devices, and we can connect the sources, drains and substrates together, right? So this network, we call it the anode or the injector. So all the floating gates, they are also connected, so that is the cathode. And all the control gates that is connected, that is called the control plate, right? So we have the anode, we have the cathode, and we have a control plate. So now I can apply the potential at the control plate, and tunneling, I can allow the tunneling to happen, and thereby the charging will be done, and then the charges will be retained. Now this tunneling current, that is basically a function of, or will be a function of the number of transistors that we are placing in parallel. Then the area of the control plate, so that plays a very significant role, and also the tunneling current density. So that will again depend on the individual say design of the FGMOS. So two things: one is if the area of the control plate, if it is higher, because now I am connecting all the control plates, so of course area is higher, right? It is a function of the number of transistors also. So current is very high, and charging can happen, and it can store the charge, and when we require it, we can connect the load between anode and the cathode, and that will give us a sufficient amount of output voltage and sufficient amount of output current. That is possible. So the basic yeah. So with the time, okay, these are the issues I will talk about. So that is what the benefit of an quantum battery is. That we can effectively use the tunneling mechanism for having a very efficient design of a battery, a lossless battery, almost we can say, because it can hold the charge to a very long time, because electrical isolation is there, so leakage is almost not possible. So this is one diagram, same diagram we have shown, that there are multiple number of FGMOSes that are placed in say parallel. That is one diagram I have shown. Now there are technology challenges Yes, of course, everywhere there happens to be some challenges, and designers have to think about and say overcome that. So with the time, tunneling electrons destroy the oxide structure. That is again one very important issue. Means every time we do the recharging, tunneling is happening. But since there is a uh, after some time, means with time, this oxide structure is getting destroyed. That is called destructive tunneling also. So for that also the solution is the material. People are trying with different material, even some nanomaterials people are trying with to overcome this phenomena, overcome this effect of this destructive tunneling. And for tunneling, there is another issue, that is for high tunneling current, you need a high electric field. That is one issue. So to have a or to generate a very high electric field may be issue in many of the cases. An optimal design is required. When we have a total network of parallel devices, then the optimization is required. How many number of devices are there? What will be the area of the control plate? All those things. So you have to optimize depending on the depending on a um, target device or a target application, right? And for the second point also, people are trying with different nanomaterials. Means high, to avoid the requirement of high electric field, people are trying to work with different material and different nanomaterial people are trying with, and many of the researchers are reporting that yes, that can be reduced. So these are some of the challenges. So I am just trying to put I am not working on battery technology, but I am trying to put some of the facts. So some people may be interested, or some may work in this domain. So that is just a very general idea of how energy harvesting actually can uh, sense, or where energy harvesting actually can be used, right? So starting from the wireless charging, because in wireless charging also I have not covered the wireless power transmission. There are also different concepts of this quantum concepts are people are trying with, because there is one say problem that is there with wireless power transfer, is that when the distance between this charger and the targeted device that changes, the charging hampers. So you have to place the device um, at the same place. So there are also some techniques by using some quantum concepts that are people I have seen people are say trying to work with, so that an efficient wireless power transfer network that is required for wireless charging, and whereas you're transferring the charges from or power from one communication node to the another communication node is also required. So that is also people are trying with, though conceptually or to implement it is not very easy. People are trying, few people are trying. Probably in around 1917 some researcher have reported it in Nature, and now people are working with it. But anyway, this wireless power transfer or wireless charging, that is having a possibility with almost all the devices. So we use the smart bands, we use the low power LED bulbs, we have many other devices, starting from our say mosquito repellents to RFID and all our body area networks. There are lots of devices. We have many say remotes that we are using for different devices, and also there are many implantable devices in the body area network as well. So now every time rather than replacing the battery, so if we can do or implement a harvesting mechanism with these devices, then of course that will work fine, and that will be great for us. And for that we have to think in different domain, the design perspective, in different perspectives of the design. So in circuit, as well as the device design concepts. So that is why I think this quantum based say devices, that will be successful, in the sense that though there are lots of challenges, I should not say that that will be the absolute solution, or that will be the absolute solution in everything. But quantum devices has potential. It has a lots of potential in the sense that you can have a miniaturized, efficient, say device, say system design. And since already we have seen that most of the challenges people are trying to overcome, so, and people are overcoming also, so that will be successful, because in device lots of research are happening. There are lots of research, people are working in different device structures, and that is why there is device revolution is taking very less time. If you can track the research history, we can see that. But in battery technology there are still lots of things I feel to be done, because yes, it is improving, and new things are coming. And as I learn, and though I don't work in that battery technology, as I have already said, but as I learn that nanomaterials are playing a very big role in battery technologies as well. So these quantum based concepts along with the nanomaterial, as I have already said, that the problems of this FGMOS or the quantum battery can also be say overcome by these nanomaterials, and people are trying with. So that is why I hope that in this say domain also, in RF energy harvesting domain also, this quantum concepts will play a very important role, and that will lead us to a very successful design of the system. So now I'm coming to the end of the session. So if there happens to be some reaction from the participant side, and if there happens to be some query, I'll be happy to try to answer, because while there is some question, the other end means from the other end, then the people at this end also gets benefited, because this is just an say discussion. No one can guarantee that everyone will know everything, and it is actually true. So that is why if there happens to be something or some queries that is raised from the participant side, then it makes the people at the other end also make to think about that issue. So I hope that some queries or some discussions may be raised from the participant side. Okay, so I hope there is no further query. Then in future also we can discuss, because there are lots of the things I need to learn also. So that is why if in future also some discussion happens to with some of the participants, then that will be great for me. So these are some of the references I have put, some of the references. So few of the work I have done, and few of the things or concepts that has been taken from other researchers. So that is the references. So I thank you for the patient hearing. So we are closing the session probably.